Earlier this month, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney joined a summit in Oslo with the leaders of 5 Nordic nations, Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Sweden and Finland, to discuss deepening cooperation on Arctic security. This comes amid rising great power competition in the Arctic, with Russia having increased its military presence in the region and NATO responding in kind, and also follows the US's threats of annexing both Greenland, a semi-autonomous Arctic territory belonging to fellow NATO member Denmark, and Canada, which US President Donald Trump has spoken about making the US's 51st state. So, in this video, we'll explain this new informal Arctic alliance, and why Canada and the Nordic countries are increasing their cooperation. If you've read George Orwell's 1984, you might remember the book's 3 powerful superstates, covering today's US, Russia and China. In the latest issue of Our magazine, we consider how these Orwellian spheres of influence are taking shape, and whether we're entering a new age of empires. That's just one of 72 pages in the magazine, because as always, there's more to too long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. Let's start with some Arctic geography. 8 countries, the US, Canada, Russia, Denmark, via Greenland, Norway, Iceland, Finland and Sweden have territory inside the Arctic Circle. Together they form the Arctic Council, a forum established in 1996, but suspended in 2022 following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. More than half, 53%, of the Arctic Ocean coastline is Russian, around 15% is American, in Alaska, and the rest, 32%, is Canadian or Nordic. According to the Simons Foundation, a Canadian non-profit, 30 of the 66 major military bases across the Arctic are Russian. Earlier this month, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney met with Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre in Oslo, and the two leaders signed an agreement to bolster cooperation on defence, security and industrial partnerships. Among other things, Canada and Norway agreed to establish a bilateral dialogue on Arctic security, explore opportunities for secure military satellite communications, promote an industrial partnership on space, artificial intelligence, digitalisation and critical minerals, and deepen cooperation on space, including Earth observation, navigation, communications, and maritime domain awareness. The following day, Carney then joined a Canada-Nordic summit, with the leaders of the so-called Nordic 5 or N5 group of Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Finland and Sweden, the first time a Canadian Prime Minister has met with all 5 Nordic leaders in a dedicated format. For context, the N5 group has existed since the late 2000s, and gained importance after Russia invaded Ukraine. Given that several Nordic countries have historical experience facing Russian expansionism, Finland, for instance, successfully defended itself against a Soviet invasion in 1939-40, while Sweden was in conflict with Russia over Baltic territories for more than 300 years, the Russia-Ukraine war renewed these concerns, prompting Finland and Sweden to join NATO in 2023 and 2024. Anyway, the Arctic has increasingly become a sphere for rising great power competition, marked not just by Russian military activity, but also by the US's interest in Greenland. This has sparked concerns inside NATO, which has responded by actively increasing its own presence in the Arctic since late January, through training exercises, deployments, patrols, and new operation centres. As such, the Canada-Nordic Summit seems to be a new format for Arctic defence and security cooperation outside the NATO framework, and without either Russia or the US. The 6 countries' joint statement includes a commitment to meet more regularly at different levels to advance our shared principles and interests, which essentially sounds like an expansion of the Nordics N5 format to also include Canada. As Halvor Hegton of the Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten put it, the 6 countries are now building their own Arctic alliance, without the other large North American country. So, why is this new Arctic alliance being formed, and what does it aim to achieve? Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, the main catalyst for this new Arctic alliance is US President Donald Trump. In recent months, Denmark and its Arctic NATO allies have faced threats of US military aggression towards Greenland, with an astonishing report published in the Financial Times last week revealing that Denmark was prepared to blow up runways in Greenland to repel a US invasion. And, like the Nordic nations, Canada has also faced threats of annexation by Trump. This was not just a demonstration of the Trump administration's disdain for NATO, but amounted to active undermining of it. And as such, NATO allies were forced to reckon with the fact that the Trump-led US might not be a reliable ally, and may even be a threat. As such, NATO members Canada and the Nordics, which have similar locations on each side of the Atlantic, indigenous populations, and major oil, gas, and seafood industries, are trying to build a transatlantic security alliance in the Arctic without the US's participation. The second related reason is the new geopolitical order. As Carney described in his widely cited Davos speech in January, the world's middle powers are now facing a rupture in the world order, marked by weakened multilateral institutions and greater transactionalism. Carney believes the middle powers risk being subsumed by larger powers unless they diversify their partnerships and build coalitions with other like-minded countries committed to multilateralism. In their joint statement, the 6 Arctic Alliance countries describe themselves as democracies and countries committed to the rule of law, human rights, and the territorial integrity and sovereignty of states, and also reiterate their strong and continued support for Ukraine, noting that Ukraine's security is integral to European and Euro-Atlantic security. Moreover, a few days before Carney met with the Nordic leaders, Canada announced a multi-billion-dollar plan to build new military bases in northern Canada's Arctic region. A move interpreted as a message to Trump, with Carney saying, "With this plan, we're taking control of our future. We will no longer rely on others to defend our Arctic security." The third reason for the Canada-Nordic alliance is growing competition in the Arctic. Greenland is an obvious example of this. While Trump mainly spoke of national security when justifying his desire to take over Greenland, claiming the US needed Greenland to prevent China or Russia from taking it, analysts understood Greenland's critical minerals to also be an underlying factor. Following Trump's comments, the 5 Nordic foreign ministers asserted in a statement that matters concerning Denmark and Greenland are for Denmark and Greenland to decide alone, while Carney said the future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. As such, the Canada-Nordic alliance aims to collectively navigate this new, more transactional foreign policy environment, where larger countries can use access to resources as leverage over smaller ones. In their post-summit press conference, Sture said the 6 leaders discussed how we are going to protect our values as open, liberal, modern democracies in a world where autocratic forces are weaponizing critical resources, and said they would bring those issues to EU and NATO summits too. He added, "We believe these 6 countries are not weak countries. They're strong countries in terms of their values, their determination, and we're ready to follow up this discussion." Finally, this new Arctic alliance is also evidence of Canada's increasing alignment with Europe. In February, for a €10 million participation fee, Canada became the first non-European country to join the EU's SAFE programme, a joint defence procurement scheme that offers loans to participating countries to invest in defence capabilities. In June, Canada and the EU struck a defence and trade deal, and in March 2025, Carney visited Europe, not the US, on his first foreign trip, saying Canada needed to strengthen its ties with, quote, reliable allies. This Canada-Nordics alliance is, therefore, another way for Canada to bolster its relationship with Europe, while reducing its dependence on the US. As we mentioned earlier, the latest edition of our magazine, Too Long, is out now, which means that if you order a physical edition, it'll be shipped to you immediately, and if you buy a digital edition, it'll land in your inbox straight away. No pre-ordering, no waiting. Plus, if you subscribe while you're there using code SPRING26, you'll get your first copy for as little as £4.99, as well as 20% off every future issue as long as you stay subscribed. One other thing to know is that if you're more of a listener than a reader, which would be fair enough, we are a YouTube channel after all, then this time round we've recorded every article in Too Long, with each of our writers doing their best audiobook impression while narrating their own articles.
The New Age of Empires. Written and read by Georgina Finley.
If you want that, then you can sign up to our new Too Long and TLDR Party bundle. That gets you a copy of the magazine, but also access to TLDR Party, our new subscription. Party members not only get access to the audio versions of every article, they also get access to our documentaries, like our new series Leaders and Losers and our upcoming documentary we're recording in Greenland right now. They get access to our behind-the-scenes podcast, The Bullpen, our bonus podcast, The Last Move, their name printed in every issue of our magazine, and more. Find out more about TLDR Party by clicking the link in the description, where you'll also find a link to subscribe to Too Long and our documentaries.